tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is author Alan Clements and actress M.J. Karmi. Artist, activist, and spiritual leader Alan Clements trained as a monk in Burma. He's written The Voice of Hope and Instinct for Freedom. What does Instinct for Freedom want to do for the world?
Well, Joan, instinct points to that deep urge of the heart, I think, that we all have, the quiet inner voices, the compelling urge to want to do something remarkable for yourself and for other people. And to me, the highest good that I can see, especially in this climate of fear, is to elevate our own freedom and elevate the status of others. So it's the instinct to be large in our love of the greatest thing that we have, is our liberty, our freedom.
Oh, that's great. And then within the book, you teach all these different kinds of ways, I guess, to develop our inner.
It's sort of like anti-teaching, if you will.
Is it?
Yeah. Well,
no, you say you give a story, and then that teaches you to be.
Well, freedom is sort of it's anti-contrivance. How do you express the naturalness of being without pretense? And I feel that, like intimacy or the metaphor of the kiss, that there is no prescription for intimacy any more than there is just the beauty of your own natural, clumsy, organic, struggling beauty to just kiss each other. And that to me is a type of freedom that I advocate in my book.
I see. How did you find yourself to want to be a monk? To be a monk, which was a good part of, a good part of your life, because you had to study to be there, right? And then... Well,
I left America when I was 27, actually, from Hollywood.
Oh, I wondered if you left the U.S. and how you found your way to Burma.
Burma. And my desire was not to be a monk or live in a monastery per se. As an artist, I was an artist, a painter.
Oh, you were?
And I wanted to understand this invisible matrix behind my eyes, in my heart. Who am I? What are these emotions? What is the mind state of love? I was just talking with your next guest. What is the mind state of joy? What is the mind state of dignity? What is the color of freedom? And so meditation, Buddhist meditation in the monastery, offered me a way to understand the nature or the qualities of consciousness.
That's interesting, because a lot of artists embrace that type of, follow that kind of teaching, because I guess it does what you say they can do. I mean, they can sit and contemplate and think about color, for one thing, and relationship to people.
Yeah, I wanted to become more fluent in just the ability to communicate the truth of my own being, rather than living in the fallacy of praise and blame and projection and all the various things that make the world right or wrong. I wanted to take more responsibility for my art.
So you gave
your heart.
You gave up your art for your heart. And what were your duties as a monk?
Virtually nothing. From day one, we had a schedule that was about 20 hours of meditation a day. You slept 4 hours a night. There was no food after 12 noon. There was no sex. There was no masturbation, no telephone, no cars, no parties. The only task, Joan, was to sit and to walk and to be in your own being in the most open and aware way.
But was it within the walls of a monastery, so to speak? Were there many of you?
We had on average of between 1,000 and 10,000 nuns, monks, and lay people in our monastery.
Are you kidding? Coming and going, or?
Mostly coming for at least a month, sometimes upward of 2 to 3 months. It was a meditation center. People came to explore consciousness.
But you didn't train anyone. You weren't in that position, were you?
I went there to learn.
You went there
I went there to apprentice. I went there to study that which was the most unknown thing about my life, which was me. Who am I?
I see.
It was only when I left the monastery to begin to share a little bit more about my learning there.
Well, where were you learning? Just from your inner self? I mean, were there teachers?
Direct experience, and you were assigned one teacher
Oh.
or a couple of different teachers. But the whole beauty of the monastic motif is self-study. It's pure empiricism. It's the pure connection of feeling the nature of mind rather than just theorizing about it.
Did you come and go during that period?
No, I stayed
You
pretty much
stayed?
in a room and stayed silent and walked slowly and ate my meals in quiet and drank tea. It was my return to simplicity.
Why then, in 1983, did you disrobe?
I was forced out of the country by the dictatorship.
Oh, Myanmar. Burma became...
Little did I know, Joan, that all the time I was in this
that's
monastery,
right.
like a diamond set in the darkness of
Beautiful.
military tyranny,
Oh.
the longest standing dictatorship in the world.
You were up in the
Burma.
mountains?
I was inner city.
Oh, you were?
But when you're closed off and you're living deeply in a cloistered life, there's not much context awareness.
Ah.
And then they came one day, just as they let me into the monastery and said, "You must leave today." And it was only years later that I realized that in Burma in 1988 there was a big revolution, very much like in China in Tiananmen Square. The dictatorship killed thousands of people. From that rose an elegant, profound woman who went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize,
And
Aung
you
San
were
Suu Kyi.
Was she jailed?
She was incarcerated
She
for
was
6 years.
incarcerated, yes.
And at the end of that period, I was invited into the country.
Back? You came
I went
back?
back in, and I met with Aung San Suu Kyi and her colleagues, and we talked for 6 months, and that book led to a book called The Voice of Hope.
That was the first book you co-wrote with her? And what were you talking about? What had gone on in the country?
I wanted to understand what moved a woman, a leader, the modern-day Gandhi, who was choosing the power of the feminine, the power of the weapon of love, if you will, to confront male military injustice. It wasn't just about Burma, it was an epic archetypal circumstance. Very much like Dostoevsky in his quote, "God and the devil are fighting there and the battlefield is the heart of man." She takes full responsibility for these epic forces of the soul, and she doesn't confront them with anger or vengeance or the firepower of weapons. And I had never seen that in the world.
But she was put away.
But she's
That's
back
how
out.
that's how they combated her,
Oh, a lot of
right?
men are so stupid that they do that kind of thing to women, don't they?
But I mean, that's what they did to her, rather than. But she stayed with it and then came out and wrote this book with you.
Although imprisoned, many people who were political prisoners realized that iron bars cannot keep me quiet.
Exactly. So that's how was she studying? Did they let her study or do anything when she was
She had a
incarcerated?
day-to-day regime, but I think more of was her indomitable conviction in the values of human dignity and compassion and freedom, that although we could not hear her, she became famous in the eyes and the ears and the hearts of the world.
What you brought into the world is the Dharma life, D-H-A-R-M-A.
It's a Sanskrit word, you may know of it. To me, it points to the value of freedom. To me, there is nothing higher in the world than to be able to speak, to be able to converse, to be able to commune together, to be able to walk and to talk and to voice our opinions. To take that freedom away would be one of the greatest forces of suffering in my life, or the suffering of others.
But you apply Dharma to self-discipline practices, don't you?
Not really. It's, again, the freedom to be in intimate rapport with yourself and others in a way that's respectful and honorable.
What about, like, you talk about self-responsibility in the book,
Self-responsibility.
don't you? Yeah.
Well, it's like an artist. It's the colors are yours, the paintbrush is in your hand. Don't smear it all over people.
And how, and what to do with it.
Don't smear your anger all over the world as if it's justified.
You're still doing teachings, obviously.
I try to live by simple example, and I offer retreats and seminars.
You do.
I have a website that people can go to. I lecture, I perform. I do anything that I can to elevate my voice while I still have it.
Well,
I love
what
it.
did you miss the most about being a monk?
At first, Joan, it was the beauty of these most remarkable, dignified relationships in the monastery with nuns and monks and other people that came. The rapport is so elegant in its simplicity.
And quiet,
People
I
are
guess.
gentle. I was sick for almost 9 months in bed with intravenous. I had typhoid, malaria.
Oh.
And people came to me, volunteers, and I did not even speak the language, and they cared for me. They wiped my brow, they fed me, they bathed me. Where in the world do you see that without pay?
You talk about living openly, freely, passionately. You also talk about freedom, that you can't put it in a box. That's one of the things you can't do, right?
Well, people do try, don't they?
Yes, that's why I'm bringing it up,
They do
because you
try.
have a different look at it.
Well, freedom like the wind, for example.
Yes.
How easy it would be to assume chasing the wind to box it because it's so special. I love the feel of it. But by the very nature of trying to box it, it's self-deceptive. And God forbid, if you're successful, you destroy it.
It's not the wind anymore, is it?
No, it's orthodoxy. It's the Taliban. It's the Catholic Church. It's Buddhism. It's the statue. It's the thing that we worship and pray and deny the very beauty of its metaphor.
You do performances also, or teach. Maybe I'm calling them performances because it's was labeled as spiritually incorrect. And why is it labeled spiritually incorrect?
Well, I'm such a fan of Bill Maher, and I'm tragically disappointed that they took him off the air, and I hope he comes back. That he's so savvy with the political world, and my whole world has been spiritual. I said, why not use something spiritually incorrect and go out there and turn this whole fundamental orthodoxy in on its head and have fun in my life?
And what do you do with it?
I just talk from my heart. It's anti-performance. It's anti-scripted.
It's not scripted?
Oh, no. I don't want to be a trained SEAL to make people laugh and
Well,
just basically
what-
have them come to me and applaud every 30 seconds.
Do you have some words that you start
No,
with?
I go out there and be totally naked. It's like a lover who wants to come in and just say, hello, here I am.
Do they interact with you, the audience?
Emotionally,
Do they ask?
energetically, and sometimes there's words, but it's totally a raw moment of original presence for me. And a joy. I have fun.
And how do you make your points?
Spontaneously.
I can't pin you down. I can't get you in that box, can I?
You
We
could
have to-
try. I'm very simple. I go to sleep at night.
We have to read Instinct for Freedom because I think, while I was reading it last night, the teachings and the experiences that you've had all over the world seem to be the examples for us to learn from what you went through.
This book is not only my own narrative and my own somewhat autobiographical story. I've had the blessed fortune to meet a lot of very remarkable people in the world, famous and anonymous both. It's my photo album, a conceptual memorabilia of some of the greatest moments of people who've triumphed over evil.
And I think it tells what you want to tell. I mean, by telling those stories, it makes the feeling of what you're wanting to convey to your audience.
I'm old-fashioned. I met so many people who, in the face of darkness, have, against all odds, Joan, come out of it not just good, but great. And I think those are the remarkable voices, the Rosa Parks out there that right now are on the streets of Los Angeles or New York, who are rising up in their own sense of dignity and confronting the lie.
So that's what you're doing on Spiritually Incorrect.
It's my
And in your book.
It's my way of confronting Big Brother
That's it. And you live in Vancouver now?
at the moment.
Oh, at the moment.
At the moment.
At the moment. Well, we're happy you came to LA to see
I'm
us.
honored.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. And don't go away because we'll be right back with MJ Karmi. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with MJ Karmi. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, attended lots of schools, but became passionate about acting after appearing in South Pacific in high school. She's earned a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, studied at the Actors Conservatory, was at the Shakespeare Theater, the Folger Theater in D.C., and after she got an MFA from Actors Studio, she came to LA. Why not stay in New York?
I only came out for 2 weeks.
Oh, I
Usual
see.
New York story. So many people say the same thing, but I brought a play with me to work in the Actors Studio in session. And I thought, well, I hadn't been out to LA at all, and as an actor, obviously this is the place to be. So I thought, well, I'll come out for 2 weeks, and I brought this play with me, and I worked on it in session, and they loved the play. And they said, well, would the playwright bring it out and workshop it, and maybe we'll produce it? And I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. And he said yes, and so all of a sudden I was workshopping this play for 6 weeks, and suddenly I found myself living here.
Was it a play that we would know?
It's an original piece. It was called Maiden Stakes, about a woman in Brooklyn, New York.
Did he write it for you?
No, he didn't. A story about a woman who was an alcoholic and someone who had slept with probably everybody in the whole neighborhood.
And did you do it on stage?
We workshopped it for the Actors Studio out here.
Oh, you did for that?
Yeah, eventually it didn't turn into a production because the playwright did not want to make certain changes in the play. And that happens a lot with
Does
playwrights. Yeah, it does. Although you see someone like Tennessee Williams, and you look at his early works, so many of his one-acts led to his great pieces. So many of them. The characters were developed in early plays. Blanche Dubois is written in a dozen different ways.
You love the stage.
I love it so much.
I know, you love the stage.
I really do.
So why didn't you go to New York or stay in D.C.?
You know, it's funny because I don't know. That's a very good question. I got out here, and I know this sounds, everything just fell into place. And I believe when things fall into place, it's meant to be. I wasn't fighting anything. I met people that wanted to work with me, that were excited about what I was doing, and it just happened.
I love the stage too, and I think California has a lot of small theater and great theater and a lot of talent. I don't know if enough people go to the theater. Like, they don't think about it as off-Broadway. I always think of it as off-Broadway here.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
And so you really see interesting things that then go on to develop and turn into something else. But you were also had a recurring role in Guiding Light.
Yes, I did.
But is that New York?
Oh, yes, that is in New York. That was 2 years ago.
Oh, so you just went back and did it now?
Oh, well, no, I've only been here for a year and a half.
Oh, is that right?
That's it. That's all.
Oh, I thought you'd been here longer.
No, I've been here for a year and a half.
You had such a long career that you'd been here for such a long time.
I came from New York.
Oh, so because I was just, I realized that Guiding Light was in New York, and I was trying to figure out how you did that. You played Helen in A Taste of Honey?
I did. I played that in January, which is another prostitute.
Where was that?
That was at 2,100 square feet in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. It was a wonderful production. It got like 10 critics' choices, and it was really wonderful. I do an accent in that as well.
What kind of accent?
Manchester, England. Although she was Irish background because her father was Irish. So there was a little bit of Irish, but she was born there, so it was definitely Manchester.
Well, talking about the accent, English accent, you're playing the lead in Beauty Queen of Leenane.
Yes.
And at the Hudson Theater. And listening to you talk, I don't hear a trace of Irish accent.
Oh, I don't have one, but one of the most gratifying things about this piece for me is that so many Irish people have come to see it, and they don't know I'm not Irish. And all of the Americans are completely convinced that I'm Irish when they see the play, because I'm playing this with Irish actors. I'm the only, although I have an Irish passport.
I was going to say, you come from an Irish background.
Yes.
American Irish.
American. My grandmother was born in Ireland. I'm a second-generation American. But all the other actors are born in Ireland. So it was very important. I was like, oh my God, am I going to be able to pull this off? And I did.
Have they helped you with your accent?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely, positively.
How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I went to, when I was getting my master's from the Actors Studio, we studied something called IPA, which is the International Phonetic Alphabet. And there are certain signs that you learn that indicate that you can't really, you know that, like the R, like the word sure in Irish, for instance, there's a certain, the way they do an R. By writing it out in IPA, I understand that sound. And then
so there's an alphabet, IPA alphabet.
Yes.
For each language? I mean, for each accent?
Every sound has a symbol in IPA, regardless of where you are. So if you're studying French, for instance, a French accent, you will go to that. There's several different R sounds, and you will go to the right R symbol.
So does it say French R?
No.
It
It's a
does
sound.
Irish R?
It's a sound. Phonetics. It's the International Phonetic Alphabet, so
that's
it's all
so
phonics.
interesting.
And then there's a wonderful coach out here. His name is Robert Easton, who has coached everybody.
He has a very famous name, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. And he's a wonderful man. He really is wonderful at what he does. And so I studied with him for a while. And then one of the men in my show, Tim Murphy, taped my dialogue for me.
Oh, he spoke it all and taped it?
He spoke all my dialogue for me into a tape, and then I listened to it. I still listen to it. I put it in the
But
car.
even if it's a man's?
Oh,
even
sure.
if it's a man's voice?
Because all I'm going for is the sound. Is the sound. And I have an ear for it. Some people do and some people don't, and I do, fortunately.
Well, you don't have a Brooklyn accent.
No, I don't, but I can do one very quickly for you.
But-
I did a show last summer where I played a woman from Brooklyn. And, yeah.
But the Brooklyn accent would be natural,
Well,
wouldn't it? You understand that
very
'cause
well.
you-
But something I found out on the show, which is interesting, is that the Brooklyn accent is not unlike an Irish accent. Because in the Irish accent, there's no TH, as they say,
TH
in
right.
Gaelic, and it's very much like one of my lines is anything other than this. Now,
Dis. I heard you
utter.
say that, and I thought I thought you talk to people from the Middle East, and they always go duh duh. I'm always like going, well, why don't they say the instead of duh duh duh?
Right, right.
They probably don't have a TH
that's
either.
exactly right. They don't.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So when I thought, oh my God, I thought I knew more about the Irish and connected to New York because New York was flooded with Irish immigrants.
Did you live in a group of
Irish
immigrants?
people? I moved around so much.
Oh.
You know, my parents were divorced when I was young, and my mother took it very badly, and I was kind of shuffled off to relatives.
Oh, that's why you went to so many different
Yeah.
schools. But did any of them have accents?
Oh, my
that helped
grandmother
you?
did.
Oh, she did. So did you live with her?
I lived with my grandmother when I was little. In the summers, my mother would send me to my grandmother.
Oh, so you had some kind of an ear for that.
Yes, and she used to say, "You're a good girl. You're a good girl."
Oh.
And I can always remember that. You know, it rang for me.
In the first act, since I wanted to show the difference because we're just conducting this interview in English, but in the first act you have a monologue that just got me because it was so Irish. The accent was so much stronger because you said a lot of words together, obviously.
Right.
And so while we're talking, what happened?
You mean in
Set
that
it up a
monologue?
little bit.
Well, what happens is it's a story about a woman in her 40s. She's 40 years old. She's a spinster in this very, very small town in Leenane, in Ireland. And she's kind of considered the loopy one in town. You know, she doesn't dress well, or she wears odd clothing. And she lives with her mother, who will not allow her to leave. And she falls in love with Pat O'Dooley, who comes home from England.
That's the part.
And the mother is very, very upset that Pat O'Dooley is going to take her away. And she has a date with Pat O'Dooley, and it's love, love. She's madly in love with him, truly madly in love with him. And they go out on a date, and she buys this little black dress. She's going to buy herself a little black dress. She buys the black dress, and she goes home, and she brings him home, and they spend the night together. And in the morning, she convinces him in the morning to come spend the night. And that's a big thing in an Irish house. He's spending the night and having sex with her in the other room, and her mother's in the other room. It's sort of, so he walks out in the morning, and the mother's in the kitchen, and a big fight ensues. And she tells, because she doesn't want me to leave, she tells Pat O'Dooley that I've been in a mental institution
Oh, right, yeah.
when I was 25. And
Yes.
that's where the monologue comes from.
So,
We have this very large fight, and I say, it's true. I was in a home there a while, after a bit of a breakdown I had. Years ago this was, when I was 25, my first time ever, my only time over. My sister had just got married, and my other sister just about to. Over in Leeds I was, cleaning work.
it's so, and then how does Helena Carroll, who plays your mother, is from Ireland.
Oh yeah.
Does she just get the rhythm of what you're doing? I mean, do you just go together
Oh yeah,
so well?
we really do. I mean, she's so wonderful to be on stage with. She's just remarkable. She's been in theater and films and television since she was a young girl.
When you go out, if you go out to dinner afterwards, do you speak in an Irish accent?
I kind of certain words. Someone wanted me to do a reading the other day of I do a Southern accent. I'm sort of like specialize in accents, and I was doing a Southern accent, and I could feel myself during the reading, although I was doing fine, and then one word would pop out, my Irish accent would pop out. Yeah, it does happen.
One interesting thing about Beauty Queen of Leenane, acting in it, being the star of it, you're producing it.
Yes, I am.
How did that happen?
Well, it's so strange because I had no intention of producing theater when I came out to LA. I had a theater company. I was producing artistic director of a nonprofit theater company in Washington, D.C. And produced 5 shows in 2 seasons, and then went to New York to get my master's from the Actors Studio.
Did you act in that producing company when
Yes,
you
I
were?
did.
Oh, you did act
Absolutely
in that
did.
as well.
I acted in all but one.
Oh, so you did. So you were
Yes, I
doing both. You had both hats on.
And it's a tricky thing, because at all times what you're trying to do is to get out of the analytical part of your brain and the concrete thinking. You want to be in that primordial, primitive, instinctual, impulse-laden state of being, so that you're really spontaneous. So you're constantly having to balance this when you're producing and then acting. You're back and forth.
Yeah, when you're acting, but then you have to be just very rigid as a producer, don't you?
My philosophy as a producer is, this is the 8th show I've produced, and my philosophy is, or 9th, I can't remember. My philosophy is you treat everyone with dignity, respect, appreciation, and then you have a very happy house to work in, and I do.
Do you come in and are a part of those plays that you're producing?
Oh, sure.
So you're there all the time?
All the time.
Looking, I see.
Sure, absolutely all the time. I do step aside. I mean, it's a very...
It's not like directing, though.
No, it's not like directing, but it's a tricky thing, because you want to have such a trust situation with the actors that you're working with. And as the producer, you never want to leave the acting. When you're with the actors, you want to only be the actor.
I was going to say, you want to be an actor with them on stage.
Absolutely, so that the trust will build and continue on stage as well as off stage. So I sort of like, I have someone to assist me.
I see.
Who does the other stuff.
The other stuff.
Yeah.
A lesson well learned.
Yes.
I thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. It was
What does
lovely.
MJ stand for?
Mary Jane.
I knew that. Why did I ask? Thanks, MJ,
you're
for
very
being
welcome.
with
It was a
us.
pleasure.
And thank you for watching the show today. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 917. We'll answer your letters, and we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.